Shadow Priest rejoiced that I came into this 14 knowing I was going to get battered into the ground constantly by the jagged mobs. I got my repair bill for you guys. I make amends. I make amends. Good morning, you wonderful specimens of creation, and welcome to Tommy's tactically dropping panties. That's what we're going with today, and of course we're now working clean. We're going to be playing our Shadow Priest today. We just did the Shadow Priest guide. I did make an egregious error. I kind of wanted to explain that here and use the opportunity to actually talk about how I approach the guides and why certainly some of the top end guys, who obviously I'm not making the guides for, have some controversy with me and stuff like that, and explain that. But to bring you up to speed on what's happening after the YouTube demonetization situation. At the moment, every video we upload instantly is demonetized, like instantaneously. So there's a lot of rumors flying around as to why that is. Particularly like WoW is being listed as a violent game. It's certain cuss words, certainly like, I can't even say them, but let's say a certain four-letter word that begins with C in the US is considered extremely offensive, whereas in the UK it's not. But it could be anything. We don't really know. A lot of people are sciencing things, trying to guess what's going on, all that kind of stuff. But who knows, right? Who knows what it is? So at the moment, we're literally making videos for free, which obviously can't go on. I mean, that can't go on. We can't keep doing that. And we can't hope that, like, Patreon survives. The Patreon guys, especially those of you who've joined Patreon, have just been amazing. But we will be shifting content to just other sources. I don't have a choice, right? There'll still be YouTube content for sure. That's still going to happen. But making this video right now, it's currently like, it's coming up to midnight here. I'm chilling, I'm enjoying myself, which is why I got into this business in the first place. I love doing this. I love talking to you guys and educating you in some way and trying to skip you ahead. I've always described it as that, is trying to skip you over the stuff that I had to take years to learn and try and get you there in a way that you understand it. Not just like you fed a sentence, which is a big problem we have in WoW. I think so, is a lot of people will certainly go to some websites and stuff where some very advanced players are discussing certain things. Currently, it's like Discord's the same thing. And take that knowledge and apply it as, not as gospel, because 99% of the time it's utterly correct. But is it correct for you? And that's a big problem, because it's probably not in many cases. Which is something we have to bear in mind. It's probably not in many cases. It's just a case of, and then why isn't it? Let me slow down a little bit. I'm a little bit hyper because I've just finished raiding, and I was dying to do a daily. I was like, I need to do the Shadow Priest. I need to talk about this in some way. And the reason is, many of the times when you check your guide, because people ask me, like, particularly, is like, wherever they currently consider to be the best source of information. So there are some excellent Discord servers and websites out there. I was blown away by several of them and how awesome the people were. Not everybody, not everybody. Some of them have been, have definitely developed some sort of egotistical approach by being their little community, which is fine. I mean, that's quite normal, to be honest. It's not a big deal to me. But the ones that have been super awesome and really stand up for their classes. So I want to give shout-outs one to the Monk Discord community. Totally awesome. Peakaserenity.com is a wonderful website. The Mages, Ezekiel, Yo, was really cool. And the Alt of Time guys. The Pallies, although I think they've pinned me as like, don't go there. Whatever, man. Whatever. I have no issue with those guys. And who else? Let me make sure I don't miss anybody. The Priests. The Priests as well for the recent guides. And this is why I'm making this video now, because one thing that I've always stood by is, of course, sometimes I can be incorrect, right? Or maybe I approach things in the way that people disagree with. I just want to point out before we get started here, I'm playing with like 4 of my friends because we just finished raiding. We have Shade on his alt tank, but his alt tank is 930, and our raid leader and guild master, so on and so forth. Hellstone, HS. Oh, are we playing with a Disc Priest? What are you, Drogo? This is as you just saw, I just got this. Got our friend here, Drogo, from the group finder. No, he's holy. Yeah, he's holy. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. I don't have priders on this character. We are doing a 14, I believe. Those guys have been super awesome. They were like, we like what you do. Can you just? We think you should make this correction though, because that would be better, especially if they know how I'm tackling things. So let's address things first. A lot of people get confused as to when I do a guide, why don't I just literally copy pasta what a lot of the top theory crafters have done? I wish I could. That would be incredibly easy compared to what I actually do. I wish that made sense, but there was 2 reasons going into Legion that I didn't want to do that, or that I knew I couldn't do that. And a big part of it... Oh, shades off. Throw some dots around. I really do wish I could. The big problem with that is a lot of the stuff changes in Legion. Now, as much as Mr. Hazakostas, as much as I like Ion and think he's good for the game and so on and so forth, and he's actually done a really good job with Legion. Really, my 1 mil DPS is just the worst, right? More dots. I am using Misery, we'll get to it, don't worry. Legion has... The game has never been in a worse place than it is right now for many classes. I have to put the usual disclaimer in. I've got to be honest, I hate having to put this disclaimer in because people like to find fault in what I say, which shouldn't surprise many of you, as that's part of the deal. Oh, I have aggro. And Shade's gone. People love to find fault or technicalities to kind of make what I'm saying not real. You know what I mean? It doesn't count because this is 1 class. But generally speaking, for a hell of a lot of classes, the game has never been worse than it is right now for sorting out your character, particularly at the high end. Oh, it's grim. It's really grim. So what am I talking about? Well, in every other expansion, even in Wars of Draenor, when it came to... my DPS is not bad, by the way. These guys just absolutely dominate. Every other expansion, it was totally fine and actually totally acceptable to just give you like a stats list, right? You want to gem this, you want to spec for this, and you want to just go ahead with that. Legion doesn't work like that. The way Blizzard's done it in Legion is they've tried to make secondary stats more interesting. But the problem is the secondary stats aren't really interesting to start with, particularly versatility, which should come as no surprise. It's not interesting. It's a flat damage buff. That's not interesting. It never has been. And it goes against Blizzard's own philosophy that they came up with around Mr. Pandaria when they changed the talent system. And it's always an interesting read, and I recommend lots of people check that. It was by Ghostcrawler. Ghostcrawler made this epic post. I'll try and link it down below. I'm not promising. But Ghostcrawler made this epic post, and he was like, you know what? My raid leader and guildmaster just died. That's awesome. Ruffle. He made this post, which was basically anything that just gives you flat damage, which is what the old talent system used to do, which is why I'm so surprised people crave that system, is actually terrible. It's really, really bad, and you should try and avoid it at all costs, right? They were just like, it's awful. It's the worst thing ever. We don't want to do that ever again. And I was like, awesome. That's really, really cool. I'm so happy I'm doing that, because they're right. Anything that just gives you plus damage is super, super dull. Incredibly dull. And I was really happy when they decided that to agree with that stance and just say, yeah, this is just terrible. We want to do away with this. Let's get rid of it. Let's come up with something a little bit new, which was the new talent system where every talent mattered in some way. Or that was the intention. Let's put it that way. The intention was that every stat should matter. They started kind of strong, but there was always, and the skeptics amongst us always agreed, is that it's a kind of an impossible goal because you're never going to be able to reach the point where you can create 3 talents in the same row and there isn't going to be one universally better. That's never going to happen in the history of video games, right? Never ever going to happen. It's nice facing a prop palette that does a million DPS. Yeah, it's really cool. I feel good about myself. So, they tried and tried. Mr. Pandaria, not Kata, Wars of Draenor. And they came to the same conclusion as we all knew would happen. But they tried their fucking hardest, man. God, I swore, didn't I? They tried their hardest. That's this video gone. They tried their hardest, but ultimately they realized it's not really possible to do that. Like, in any way, shape, or form, it's not possible to do that. So, let's stop trying, which I loved when they took this mentality, which was, let's just stop trying to do this. Because it doesn't work. We can't just make this happen, because the game doesn't work that way, right? It's all very well and good saying we want this and this and this to happen. But if the game doesn't literally work that way, you're not going to get very far, right? Don't you love this? I just want to say, don't you love this Shadow Priest multi-dotting? Oh, it's so good. Just trying to keep Void Bolts up on everything. I've lost a lot of the skill that I picked up with multi-dotting. I was the multi-dotting king when I was a main Warlock, particularly Affliction. I'm kind of not there anymore, but I want to get back there because it's so good. When you get it right, it's a very satisfying experience. Anyway, so in Legion, they kind of agreed that, yeah, we can't really do that. And so what they did in Legion was try and create the talent system in a way that exemplified... what a git. Odin's beard. Gandalf's flip-flops. Gandalf's flip-flops. They tried to make it in a way that exemplified what that talent should be used for instead. So they came up with the very simple... this is your AoE talent, this is your single target talent, right? For most classes, that's what they tried to do. But at the same time, and that kind of worked, most classes could do that. It led to some really boring ones, like the Ret Paladin, I think, suffers from that the most, is their talents are really dull because of that idea. And so they're just interchangeable amongst the others. But at the same time, we had the problem at the start of Legion, and a lot of people's memories seem really foggy on this, but you might remember that at the start of Legion, secondary stats were really too powerful for a lot of specs. Particularly my mage actually suffered from this quite a lot. Is the secondary stats were just far too powerful. Let's void torrent this trash because this trash sucks. It'd help if I put dots on this target, wouldn't it? And in doing so, they made main stats undesirable. So people were just wearing whatever ridiculous jewelry they had, like getting absolutely crazy jewelry and just trying to make it work. One of the big reasons I'm dying here, by the way, is I have really low AP and low stamina compared to where I should be. It's not unsurprising in a 14 that this trash is going to kill me, so I'm not like upset or anything by what's happening. It's perfectly perfectly normal for this to happen in here at this level with this trash and fortified. Totally normal. So you can mock all you want, but this is totally normal. So they changed the way secondary stats worked, and they tried to exemplify them. Now, what we've ended up with at the top end, getting back to my point that we started with, is that once you start getting huge amounts of stats, which you do in really high-end gear, you start getting absolutely crazy amounts of stats, is the lines between what's good and bad start to blur really heavily. And something that obviously hasn't helped that is legendaries. Legendaries. So if you're a main character, certainly if you started playing from Legion, so if we Legion start, so if we look at something like my mage, my mage currently has only 3 legendaries in the entire game left to get, and there are several people who've finished all of them. Not only that, he raids Mythic, right? He raids Mythic, the top end content in the world. There's only 2 bosses left in the game for me to kill on my mage. All that translates into a character that has a huge selection, more than is reasonable. I'm going to die here. More than is reasonable amount of stuff to pick from and mess around with my stats. It also means that the stats that I might find desirable as a new player, I have a lot of them. And I also now have legendaries and tier bonuses. Last man standing, Preacher. Oh, I was so close, man. I was so close. That was so close. I've got a feeling my boys might be triggered here. I think Drogo's doing his best, though. I think Drogo's having a go. He's a good lad. He's doing his best here. I have weird things that happen, because I have set bonuses now, and a lot of the set bonuses that certainly as a mage and many other classes fall into the same category. Once you get high enough, a lot of the set bonuses start to diminish the stats that you usually look for. And then, I've described this in the past as the Legion tree, and I see Legion's character growth as a tree. So what you have is this huge chunk of information that you learn, which is very solid, it's very linear, it goes all the way up, it's just layer upon layer upon layer as the tree grows. And then you hit this sort of plateau at the top, where everything starts to branch out sideways. Your knowledge doesn't really increase in terms of game knowledge. What it does is it starts to branch sideways and in different directions of the tweaks and the slight differences that can occur. And in that situation, things get to be a hell of a mess. Now, I personally believe, and this was the approach we took with the Legion guides, or I took, because it's fully my responsibility, I designed how they were going to work, to try and almost avoid that as much as possible. And the reasoning behind that is I actually think that knowledge is super off-putting to a lot of people, especially potentially new players. Now, a big part of this is I don't think a lot of people really understand what it looks like to be a brand new player in Legion. A lot of people who play the game now and probably watch this video have forgotten more knowledge than a new player could ever hope to learn in a year's time. The experience levels are that different. I remember my first guide that I made, or one of my first guides, one of the first comments I had is, what is a GCD? Now, some of you, like, you're either smugly going, lol, or you're going, what do you mean by a GCD, right? And that's the difference, and you don't appreciate it. You really don't. It depends on your perspective. It's okay, us, and people like me, playing for 12 fucking years, and going, you really don't know what a GCD is, with that kind of smuggy attitude? And it is a smuggy attitude, because guess what? There was a time when you didn't know what a GCD was either. Oh, you toenail. You toenail. There was a time when you didn't know what GCD was either. But for me, it was such an eye-opening experience. I was like, oh my god, like, I really do not appreciate how much I know. Like, that's the literal sense of it. I have no respect for how much information I have on this game in my head compared to a lot of people who play this game. Like, I have no respect for that at all. So it became very apparent early in my sort of career as doing the guides for all the classes in World of Warcraft is that I needed to pick who I was talking to. And for a while, about a year ago, I started labeling my videos differently, because obviously we grew to a size, the channel grew to a size where we had players who had started as noobs. This is what hurts the most, man. What hurts the most, honestly, these are the Shadow Priest problems. I bet the Shadow Priests are going, been there, bruh, been there. Channeling Void Torrent and get interrupted, nice. All good fun. Let's just... Come on, die. Oh, come on. Please. There we go. There we go. I had to reevaluate what I do and who I'm actually talking to. And I tell you what, if you're curious about this, check what my wife looks like playing WoW. My wife has always avoided WoW for the longest time. She's not a gamer. She's not a gamer, right? She doesn't look as the word nerd, or didn't look at the word nerd with any sign of respect. And you know what changed her mind? You guys changed her mind, actually. Once she met a lot of you at PreachCon, and she was like, okay, this isn't what I expected. Like, there's that predetermined, this is what a gamer nerd looks like, right? Mind bomb that guy. And my wife was not always the cheerleader type, I'm not saying that, but she was certainly... I love it. She was certainly in the mindset that gamers were all basement-dwelling nerds, which I never was, so I was surprised that she thought that. I think she thought I was the exception, or something like that. And then she met a lot of you at PreachCon and changed her mind. But you watch her play WoW, and that's a truly newbie experience, and you'll just go, I can't watch it. Physically, I can't watch it. I'm not exaggerating. It's my wife. I love the woman. I love the woman. She's the mother of my children. I cannot watch her play World of Warcraft. It's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating. Because it makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me whatsoever that people can be that, you know, not do stuff in a certain way. Like, why would you not do this in this way? Why wouldn't you run straight to the quest? Why aren't you immediately checking your map for where to go? And why are you running in the wrong direction? The map's clear. Why wouldn't you go there? You know, this kind of stuff. All very normal. Oh, God. I wish I knew when to dispersion here. That would be sweet. But I genuinely don't. And you might understand where I'm coming from, is that even if you know something, you know a lot more than actually a lot of WoW players do. And my personal opinion on this is the worst WoW players in the end. This is obviously a question I get asked quite a lot, is like, what do you consider to be the worst kind of WoW player? And the obvious answer for a lot of people is noobs, right? Yeah, newbie players. Players who screw me up. Not for me. Not in the least. Like, a noob can learn. And that's something I do in my viewer raids all the time. I will take people who are non-raiders, put them in a raid experience, and more importantly, and if you ever watch my stream, you'll know lots of evidence of this, is when they feel uncomfortable and they're like, do you want me to stop doing this because, do you want me to, let's say they're tanking, do you want me to stop tanking because I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing? I make it a point to say, no, I want you to be able to make mistakes in my raids. I want you to be able to learn. I want you to feel comfortable that you can screw up, ask me a question, and I'm not going to freak out at you about it, right? Because that would be terrible, and I don't want that for anybody. I don't want you to feel like you have to already... It's kind of like the overgearing argument, right? I don't want you to feel like if you don't like overgear this and already have done it multiple times, then you shouldn't be doing this content now. That's not how the game works. It's never worked for any of us in that way. So when it came to designing the guides, for Legion in particular, I knew it was going to be a huge problem. I knew we were going to get a lot of controversial answers. I knew we were going to annoy some people, not intentionally. I fully intended in every single guide, it was actually part of the original design, to include all the Discord channels and stuff like that. So people could, you know, take the next step. Because I wanted to put them on the right path. I just want to put you on the right path to get into a place where you mainly understand things. And you'll notice that when I do a guide, I spend an absurd amount of time reading talents and stuff, right? And people go, why are you doing that? Why are you spending so much time just like reading talents? People could read for themselves. And I'm like, that's not what I'm trying to actually teach people here. What I'm teaching people is to be able to understand how their class works without having to go and check somewhere else. And in doing so, the thing I'm mainly trying to defeat there is one, uncertainty. And that uncertainty comes from, a lot of players, what they do is they copy a build. So they might go to Alt of Time, or they might go to Peak of Serenity, or they might WoW Armory somebody who's a streamer or something like that, right? And they'll copy their build. And they're like, well, this guy, who I know is good, is using this build. So that's the best build, right? And as we found out when we brought up the topic, and some of you remember this, when we brought up the problem of tomes... When we brought up the problem of tomes, is we found out people never respec in WoW. There are so many people who just never, ever respec. Ever. And it blew my mind. I was like, you don't? Because I respec like multiple times a day. Why wouldn't you respec? And the biggest answer we got is because I'm already the best spec. Now, what did I say at the beginning of the video? Blizzard designed Legion talents to not be that way. They're specifically designed to not be that way in a lot of cases. And again, that caveat that I had to put in is like, some classes don't work that way. But for a lot of us, they do work that way. Like, it's not a case of just spec this, that's best. Now, exactly, some classes do work that way. Like, this guy's just permanently trapped in Sanguine. Like, I would give anything for a Blelf Silence right now. Am I gonna have to like pop Vampiric? No, I haven't even got it anyway. It doesn't matter. Die, die, die. The game doesn't work that way, but even respecking is seen, and this probably sounds ridiculous to some of you, but it has to be said. Even respecking seems like a really kind of hardcore thing to do for a lot of players. Like, getting flasks for a lot of players is really hardcore, and that you know, these are the guys that I'm talking to. So when it came to the guides, I not only had to learn everything I could, and I see it a lot in the YouTube comments, is people trying to help me because they feel like I don't know certain things. And there are obviously definitely things that I don't know. But I've always been freely open about I didn't know that. I'm not embarrassed by that. I'm trying to encourage you. If I make the guides and say, I don't know the answer to this, it's totally fine for you to go, oh, really? Cool. I didn't know that. What else can you teach me, right? Educate me so I know the answers next time. And then I don't have to, like, sit in silence like, oh, God, I hope he doesn't think I'm a noob. You know, that usual nonsense. The question is, do I disperse here or not? Oh, I've got Guardian Wings. I'm alright. Guardian Wings, I'm alright. So when designing the guides, it would have been super easy for me to just copy what's currently BIS and then go about my day. Now, Legions doesn't work like that. In fact, it shifts all the time, and it's shifting, of course, in a week's time, 7.3. A lot of huge class changes are coming in, and Andy was like, what are we going to do here? I'm like, well, we designed the guides with this in mind. One, we know that our audience that follow our guys can read the talent changes and understand how they affect their character. That's when it's going to shine, right? That's when it's going to shine. They're not going to need, hopefully if they listen to what I actually said, they're absolutely not going to need to check somewhere else to see what's going on, because they should be able to read what's happened and what's changed and go, oh, okay, I get it. Right? This makes total sense to me now. And that will be awesome. And we've already seen that happening, because I talked about this uncertainty earlier. And there's a big uncertainty in a lot of players when they think they know what that they've done correct, but they don't know. They read it somewhere. They're not really sure. They're not 100% sure. So when some random noob or some random guy in the middle of LFR or whatever they might be training on says you've got the wrong talent, it causes almost an air of panic in players, because they're like, maybe I do have the wrong talent. I'm not entirely sure because I just read this on a website. Maybe that's out of date now. I don't really know why I chose this. I chose it because I was told it was best. Maybe it's not best anymore. You know, these kind of things are what go through a lot of people's heads. So the purpose I have, or what I aim to do, is by spending certainly a lot of time on the talents, which I consider to be the most important part, is simply so those guys can go, no, this is best for me here, and here's why. Right? So on the Blood DK, Rune Tap, for example, it's like, no, I want Rune Tap here, and here's why. And that is, for me, is the creme de la creme. That's the creme de la creme of what I want to have happen, is people to be able to go, nah. Oh, 910. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. No, not great, but not bad. What do we get? Ah, 15 more. Free win. Giving people that confidence to say, no, I actually understand how my talents work. I know what they're doing for my character, and you're wrong. And we had very quickly, I remember we posted the Death Knight guys first. We very quickly had people who were learning Death Knight respond. I didn't tell people to tell me that that's what they were doing. And they started responding with, I told a guy today that why I was taking my talents. I've never been able to do that in history of WoW ever. So a big part of it was giving people that confidence. That's more important to me than like the stats and stuff like that, because the stats and stuff become a mess later on, particularly for a lot of specs and classes. But easy win. I'm going to keep talking for a little bit. We just did that. I wanted to talk about misery specifically. So a big part of doing the guides that I've had to cope with is what don't I say? What don't I say? And people probably feel a bit offended by that. It's like, why don't you tell me? I'm not stupid. I know you're not stupid. But I also hope, in that vein, that... easy. In that vein, I also hope that you understand that once you're good enough to start asking those kind of questions, like, wait a minute, what about the little interactions that happen here and here, Preacher? Like, I've got this tier bonus now. And I also have, like, you said, you know, get this stat up to here, so what happens then? At that point, we reached the point in Legion where you need to be invested in your class pretty much constantly, like on a daily basis. And that's where you need to go to the specific websites and the Discords and stuff for the stuff that's ever evolving, because Legion constantly evolves and changes. And I look at the changes coming next week on my other screen here, and DKs are getting overhauled, Feral Druids are getting overhauled, some changes to Monk, Paladins are getting changed around, Elemental Shamans are getting changed around, Warlocks and Fury. These are all many specs that are going to need updating and looked at. And this is happening on a weekly basis in a lot of cases, or 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We barely go a month without some class changes and stuff coming, and it's impossible for me to keep up with that. Right? I'd have to be like constantly researching every spec in the game all the time. It's a physical impossibility. Didn't used to be, but now it is. Now there's too many classes, too many specs, and Blizzard is constantly changing things. They're never happy. It seems like they're never happy anyway. And therefore it's impossible for you to do that. So when I design the guides, I design them with everything people need to get going, right? To get going. And hopefully that's what I target to do, which triggers a lot of people at the high end, because they're like, why don't you talk about this, this, and this, and this? And often the case is it's been a choice for me not to talk about that, because I don't think it's what you need if you're just starting out and you're getting your relinquished gear. And, you know, you're doing world quests and you're practicing some heroic and early mythics and doing all that. The confidence to be able to understand how your spec works and then see when it starts to evolve and change, I consider that to be way more important. And a lot of people probably disagree with me. And maybe you would be of the mindset that I would rather you do many guides quickly and keep up to date with everything. I don't think that's useful. I think the way the game evolves on a weekly basis, like I've just described, means that you need people who have a lot of passion for a particular spec or a class, as these guys do, and are invested in it on a daily basis. Like, they're constantly tweaking, working things, running sims and all that kind of stuff. I've got to magnify that by 36. And ultimately, that's not what I'm after. It's not what I'm after when I do a guide. That's why they're called the basic guides. It's just get started. So yesterday with the Shadow Priest, I downplayed Misery. And that was a choice I made, and I went too far with it. And the guys from the Priest Theory Crafters were like, take that back a bit. I downplayed it because what does Misery do? Vampiric Touch also applies Shadow of Pain, so it puts both your dots up in one cast. I look at spells like this, and I know for a new player it becomes a crutch. It becomes a crutch when you have something like this, because it makes life so much easier. So much easier. And the only time you're really going to see this be a problem is some of the higher health LFR bosses, and like tyrannical high mythic plus. Anything outside of that really ain't a problem, and that means that you kind of default to Misery. Now, the truth of the matter is, Misery is used a hell of a lot, particularly in dungeons. That's why I used it here, because you've got multi-dot many targets. I half the globals and the cast times that I do that in, save myself a ton of globals, which means I can do more damage, and that's why it's great, and it is wonderful. It is great, and that's why I used it today. But I don't want people. I actively don't want people to become reliant on this and say, "Well, Misery is just easier." It's like, that's not the way this. That's not how this talent's supposed to work. It's supposed to enable you to work in a busy environment much simpler and save yourself a lot of spell casting that you could get rid of with Misery for mobs that aren't going to last a long time, and refreshing dots in a much easier way. And that's why I downplayed it. And that's kind of, hopefully through this video, I've kind of taught you through the process that I go through when making a guide, and why I don't just go to like Warcraft logs or whatever, just copy whatever's best and go, this works, look, this was the top spec that somebody used, right? For anybody who's more interested in, especially if you're not at the high end, if you really are interested in how wonky it can be at the top end, I would suggest reading about, say, a Fire Mage is currently one of the most horrendous out there. Read, I think it's Ezekiel who wrote it, the Fire Mage Guide on Altered Time. Read that and understand why the phrase sim it is a big deal. We'll talk about simming soon as well. We'll talk about sim it soon. But thank you so much for watching. I hope that explains it, and I hope I redeemed myself somewhat. Shadow Priest rejoiced that I came into this 14 knowing I was going to get battered into the ground constantly by the jagged mobs. I got my repair bill for you guys. I make amends. I make amends. I'll see you later, everybody. Bye-bye.